Discover the heartwarming moment a cop slaps a man, unbeknownst he's the chief judge transforming a small town forever. Jake Thompson wiped the grease from his hands, the sun casting its late afternoon glow over rusted cars and tired faces in the small Midwestern town of Maplewood. Nestled among fields of corn and memories, this was home. A place where Friday night football painted the sky with lights and laughter, but lately, shadows loomed larger than life. Bills stacked like the tall, unkempt grass outside his shop. He was just a mechanic, but for his 2 kids and his wife, Laura, Jake was everything. Each day, he fought to keep hope alive while wrestling with the weight of feeling invisible. After a long day beneath the hood of a pickup truck, Jake returned home to find his kids sprawled across the kitchen table, textbooks open but attention waning. "Math's a monster," his daughter grumbled, head resting on her arm. They needed him, and even as exhaustion weighed down his bones, he smiled. "Let's tackle that monster together," he said, pouring energy into a bedtime story with enthusiasm that masked his fatigue. Each laugh, each tiny triumph over math problems, lit a small fire in his heart, but just outside, the streets whispered of petty crime. Shotgun shells and broken glass told tales of vandalism and fear. One night, in a fit of frustration, Jake confronted Officer Rob, the local cop who seemed oblivious to the deteriorating situation. "You can't keep turning a blind eye," he shouted at the diner, the air thick with tension. "These problems are real." The diner's patrons turned their heads, the clatter of forks and conversations fading into an anxious silence. And then a slap. The sharp crack echoed, leaving mouths agape. Rob stepped back, realization dawning as he looked into Jake's furious eyes. Unknown to both, the slap landed on the very man who had lectures to deliver on Justice Chief Judge Martin, hidden in plain sight. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. Within hours, whispers ignited into hot debates. Some rallied behind Jake. "Forgiveness is what we need," they urged, echoing his resilience, while others clamored for Rob's resignation. Folks in town exchanged pointed glances and simmering comments, as tension crackled like electricity in the cold, dark nights. Jake was torn. Each side tugged at his spirit, vengeance felt powerful but foreign. He glanced at Laura, her worried smile feeding his struggles. Through his family's support, he began to understand their shared fight that he needed to confront Rob and the chief judge, binding his frustration into a pursuit for something greater: community healing. The thought of standing before the hidden figure of justice was daunting. Yet, that invisible hand of fate was moving, challenging Jake to rise. Standing at the edge of this emotional abyss, he could either dive into vengeance or pull back into compassion. As the town teetered on the brink, the question remained: could forgiveness be their path forward? And what if their lives hinged on this unexpected collision? Jake's heart raced as he stepped into the unknown, ready for whatever came next. As the sun dipped below the horizon, a sense of urgency filled the air. Jake stood outside his house, looking up at the vast sky that felt both open and constricting. His heart was symphonic, a frantic drumbeat of anxiety and hope as he prepared to face the impending storm. He couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. "Dad, you okay?" His youngest son, Ethan, peeked out from the front door. The innocent question pulled Jake back from his swirling thoughts. "Yeah, buddy. Just thinking," he replied, evading details. Ethan was just 9, too young to bear the weight of his father's worries. Laura emerged from the kitchen, rubbing her hands on a dish towel. "Are you ready for this?" Her eyes sparkled with concern, and Jake could see the fatigue etched across her face, a mirror of his own. "I have to be. We need to figure things out," he admitted, feeling the weight of the moment settle between them. She stepped closer, brushing a stray hair behind her ear, and took his hand in hers. The warmth of her touch was a small comfort amidst the chaos. Determined to confront Rob and Chief Judge Martin, Jake began his journey to the police station, each step echoing like thunder in his chest. The town felt different tonight, heavier under the blanket of night. He couldn't help but wonder how many others shared his tunnel vision, sensing the shift around them. As he entered the station, the familiar room buzzed with anxious tension. Officers whispered, darting glances at him like startled birds. Jake felt the weight of their stares but squared his shoulders, pushing against the discomfort. This was about more than just him. In the corner, Rob stood with his back turned, but Jake felt the gravity of the man's presence. He took a breath, clutching the edges of his resolve, ready to face the man who made a choice in anger but, perhaps, needed redemption, too. Rob. Jake's voice cut through the murmurs. The officer turned slowly, surprise flashing in his eyes. Jake, Rob replied, his tone lower than usual, almost subdued. The tension spiked. Jake waved away the ghosts of their last encounter. He refused to be consumed by past anger. "We need to talk," he said, trying to keep his tone steady. "About what?" Rob asked, a hint of wariness returning. "About where this town is headed, about us, about forgiveness." Jake felt the words tumble from his lips, partly conviction, partly desperation. Just then, Chief Judge Martin walked in, an imposing figure with a presence that demanded attention. "I heard there was some commotion," he said, scanning the room. His eyes landed on Jake and Rob, and for a brief moment, time slowed as the weight of their shared experience hung in the air. "Chief Judge," Jake stepped forward, his heart pounding in his ears. "We need to have a serious discussion about what happened last night, but more importantly, how we can mend this community." The judge's expression was unreadable. Jake held his breath, the silence stretching like an elastic band ready to snap. The room felt charged with possibility. The other officers leaned in, their interest piqued. Could forgiveness be the catalyst for change? Could they unite for a solution? "What exactly do you propose?" Judge Martin finally asked, his voice a steady calm amidst the storm. Jake's resolve steadied. "Let us find a way to heal this town together." As their gazes locked, a flicker of understanding passed between them, but just as hope began to glimmer, a loud crash interrupted the moment, a sign of chaos unfolding just outside, reminding them all that the fight was far from over. Everything hung in the balance, and Jake saw it clearly now, the true battle was just beginning. Would the town embrace healing, or was it too late? With every heartbeat echoing in his chest, he felt a new urgency. The next step they took could change everything, but would they be ready? The crash echoed through the police station, piercing through the tension like a knife. Jake's heart sank. He swung around to face the door, adrenaline racing through him. The officers exchanged panicked glances, and a few rushed to investigate, their uniforms a flurry of movement. "Wait!" Jake called out, his voice steadying despite the urgency rattling in his chest. "What's happening out there?" Rob and the chief turned their attention to him, their expressions shifting from confrontation to concern. The three of them stood at an impasse, a strange unity forming in the face of potential chaos. If there was one thing that could break the cycle of fear gripping their town, it was this solidarity. Just then, one of the younger officers burst through the door, eyes wide with disbelief. "There's a crowd outside. People are shouting. They're upset about everything that happened last night." Jake felt cold dread settle in his stomach. "What are they saying?" "Something about justice, about taking things into their own hands." The officer's breath hitched. "They're demanding answers." Rob ran a hand over his face, frustration etched across his features. "This isn't how we fix things," he muttered, guilt flickering behind his eyes. Chief Judge Martin stepped forward, rising to his full height. "We have to calm this down before it escalates." He looked to Jake, a newfound determination sparking in his gaze. We can't afford more violence. Jake nodded, the weight of the moment sinking in. This was bigger than their personal grievances, it was about the community's sanity, their shared future. With calm resolve, he turned to the officers still lingering near the entrance. We need to talk to them. All of us. Right now. Are you sure about that? Rob asked, uncertainty creeping back into his voice. Jake met his gaze, the flicker of fear mixed with hope in his heart igniting a fire within him. We need to show them we're willing to listen, he insisted. If we don't stand together, this will only get worse. Laura's face flashed in his mind, her encouraging smile, her belief that they could find a way through this. He couldn't let her down. He wouldn't. All right, let us do it, the chief said, his voice firm. But we need to be strategic. Approach with caution. As they moved toward the door, a palpable tension enveloped them. Outside, the shouts grew louder, a chant uniting the crowd into a single, undulating wave of discontent. They hadn't just lost trust, they felt betrayed, forgotten. Jake stepped into the fray, flanked by Rob and Chief Martin. The heavy air buzzed with emotion. Faces turned toward them, some filled with anger, others demand for understanding. He raised his hands, a gesture of peace, the streetlights casting a soft glow against the fatigue lining their faces. Everyone, please. Jake called out, his voice trembling but undeterred. We're here to listen. We want to talk about what happened, we want to address your fears. The crowd quieted, if only for a moment. Jake could see the disbelief etched on their expressions, mingling with a flicker of hope. This was a fragile bridge between anger and understanding. But then, just as he was about to continue, someone in the back shouted, "You think we'll just forget? You think that's enough?" The sound of those words hit like a thunderclap. Jake's heart raced again, every eye fixed on him as if the answers rested solely on his shoulders. He took a step forward. No, it's not enough. But we're willing to try. Not just for us, but for everyone living in this town. A murmur of complexity rippled through the crowd, a mix of skepticism and curiosity. Whatever hope he ignited felt precarious, like a light battling against encroaching darkness. Then came the challenge that would define this moment. A man stepped forward from the crowd, voice loud and commanding. Do you really think we can trust you? What have you done to fix it? Jake's breath hitched. The man's words hung in the night, and every heartbeat counted down the seconds until Jake's response. Would he rise to meet the moment or fall back? The sun had fully set, but somehow, it felt like they just stepped into the first rays of dawn. Would this be the moment they turned the tide, or was this only the beginning of a deeper struggle? And in that charged space, on the edge of turmoil, Jake desperately sought the right words. Jake felt the weight of the moment crushing him. He looked out into the sea of faces before him. Frustration etched in each line, anger simmering just beneath the surface, and a desperate hunger for resolution. They weren't just looking at him, they were holding him accountable. Jake clenched his jaw and kept his gaze steady. Trust isn't given, he said, finding his voice amid the raging storm around him. It's built. And right now, I know we have a long way to go. But I promise, we will work together to rebuild that trust. A low murmur rippled through the crowd. It was a fragile sound, full of doubt and anger intertwined with something else, curiosity. Jake could feel their scrutiny, the weight of their expectations pressing down like a hot summer sun on his back. And what does that mean? The man challenged, stepping close enough that Jake could see the fury pooling in his eyes. Words aren't enough anymore. We saw what happened. Lives changed forever, and where were you when it mattered? Jake took a deep breath, trying to match the man's intensity. He glanced at Rob and the chief, who exchanged glances of concern and determination. They needed to be united, but there was something else, they needed to be real. It means we hold ourselves accountable, Jake began, his voice steady now. It means we start with transparency. You deserve answers, real answers. Not just from me, but from all of us here. We're all equally responsible for this community. The crowd stirred. Each person was wrestling with emotions that were both old and new, struggles they carried in silence now bubbling to the surface. Hope and fear intermingled, creating a tautness in the air. How can we believe you? Another voice rang out from the back, shaking the ground beneath Jake's feet. Every promise has been broken before, why would this be different? Jake met the eyes of those in front of him, feeling the weight of each question, every skeptical expression. He took a step forward, closing the distance between him and the crowd as if he could pull them closer to his sincerity. I don't know that you will. But I ask for the chance to prove it to you. Trust is a two-way street. We need your voices, your concerns, your guidance as much as you need our protection and support. There was a collective intake of breath, the air electric with hesitance. He could see some faces softening, uncertainty mixing with a budding flicker of hope. Yet, he knew the struggle wasn't over. The journey was just beginning. The man who challenged him stepped back, his hand running through his hair. The tension was still palpable, yet Jake felt something change, a tentative understanding taking form. Then, an elderly woman, her face lined with years of hardship, rose from the crowd. My son deserved better. He's gone because of what happened, what was done. Her voice trembled with grief yet carried strength. If you want to fix this, start with us. Start by hearing our stories. Yes, someone else shouted, and soon voices joined in. They were tentative at first, one after another increasing in volume, spilling truths that had been hidden for too long. Jake felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes as each confession poured out a wave of stories that needed to be heard. Jake raised his hands again. We want to listen. Every one of you deserves to be heard, and together, we can begin to heal. Let us gather. Let us meet regularly here, in this community space. The crowd was no longer just a thrumming mass of anger, they were individuals sharing hearts jostled by pain and yearning for connection. Hope surged through Jake as he felt this often fractured community begin to mend, if only slightly, but just as the mood shifted, a sound sliced through the moment like a knife. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder and closer. Shadows shifted uneasily. Jake's heart sank, realizing the fragile unity was threatened again. Stay together. Jake shouted, bracing himself for whatever would come next. We'll face this. Together. But the urgency was palpable, and there was an unspoken fear that gripped everyone around him. Was this the beginning of redemption or merely a prelude to more chaos? As the sirens approached, Jake struggled to keep the momentum alive, knowing that the next few moments would be critical. Would they emerge from this stronger, or would fear once again tear them apart? He held his breath, waiting for the answer to unfold. The wail of the siren sliced through the air, pulling every frantic gaze toward the street. Panic flared up like a match against dry leaves, igniting the crowd's anxiety. Jake felt his heart race, not just from the sirens but from the uncertainty of their next move. He pressed his lips together, willing himself to project confidence. Everyone, stay calm, he urged, but the words sounded hollow against the growing noise. He scanned the faces before him, searching for anyone who might need reassurance as the sirens crescendoed, drowning out all else. Then it happened. A police car screeched to a halt just outside the gathering. The doors flew open, and officers poured out, urgency in their every move. A knot formed in Jake's stomach as he recognized one of the figures emerging from the passenger seat, Chief Morgan, her face a mask of determination that matched his own rising dread. Jake, she called, cutting through the chaos, we need to talk. He nodded sharply, stepping toward her with quick strides. What is going on? There's been an incident down at the docks. A fight broke out between some locals and outsiders. It's getting out of control. She hesitated, her voice trembling slightly. We can't let this escalate. I need your help to stabilize the situation. The implications hung between them, thick and suffocating. The very thing they had just begun to mend threatened to unravel all over again. Jake turned back to the crowd, who were now shifting uncomfortably, whispers of concern swirling among them. "Listen," Jake raised his voice, feeling the weight of despair cling to his chest. "There's a situation at the docks. We need to stay united. I know it's hard, but I need you all to trust us. We will handle this." But even as he spoke, he could see the doubt written across their faces. The anger from before simmered just beneath the surface, ready to boil over. The sound of chaos erupted from the direction of the docks, and instinct kicked in. Jake turned to Chief Morgan. "Let us go." They moved swiftly, the tension like fire in the air, fueling each hurried step. The crowd started to disperse, some murmuring protests, others screaming, "Not again." The fear was palpable, echoing in the pounding of Jake's heart. "Jake!" It was the old woman from earlier, her eyes wide and frantic. "Be careful. Please. Not more violence, we can't take it." He felt a sliver of hope amid the chaos. Their concerns were the first sign of real connection, a bond kindled within the ashes of distrust. "We'll get through this. Together." He shouted, his words punctuated by another distant crash. Trapped between fear and resolve, Jake led the way. As they turned the corner toward the docks, the scene unfolded in a rush of flashing lights and shouting voices. The air was thick with the tension of impending conflict. Just then, a figure stumbled from the throng, blood trickling down his forehead, eyes wild with anger and pain. It was one of the very men involved in the brawl. He pointed a shaking finger at Jake, shouting accusations about betrayal and loyalty. Jake stepped forward, ready to intervene, when suddenly, Chief Morgan gripped his arm tightly. "Wait. We need to hear him. All of them." Jake hesitated, confusion brewing. To confront this raw display of rage could ignite the crowd's fury. "Chief, what if they don't want to listen? Then we change that. We let them talk. It's the only way." Heavy silence settled, but Jake felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. The stakes were higher than ever. Could he calm this storm? With every breath, he could feel the eyes of the crowd upon him, waiting. In that moment of uncertainty, a determination sparked within. "Okay. Let us hear it," he shouted. "We'll listen to what you have to say." Will the voices that emerge from the crowd be enough to forge a new path through the turmoil? As tension mounted, Jake realized he had stepped into a battle not just against anger, but for the very soul of their community. The crowd fell silent, the weight of anticipation thick in the air. Jake saw a flicker of uncertainty cross the bruised man's face, but beneath it simmered an intensity that could ignite a violent reaction. "Who are you to dictate our lives?" he shouted, his voice cracking under the pressure. "You don't know what we've been through." Jake took a steadying breath, feeling Chief Morgan's grip anchor him. "That's exactly why we're here. We want to understand," he said, trying to bridge the gap between the man's pain and the anxious crowd. "But we can only do that if we listen to each other." The man, still glancing back at his companions, seemed torn. Anger battled with the need to be heard, the storm inside him reflected in the faces around them, some scared, others eager for a fight. Jake's heart thudded loudly in his chest. This was what he feared, the explosion of all that pent-up frustration and bitterness. Then, slowly, the man dropped his finger, his shoulders slumping. "You don't get it," he spat, a tremor of vulnerability betraying his tough exterior. "The docks were ours. We've worked this land, and now they come in like they own it." His voice broke, and for a moment, he looked as if he might buckle under the weight of it all. "They take everything from us." In that moment, Jake saw beyond the rage. He caught a glimpse of the frustration that had clouded the judgment of so many. "I hear you," Jake replied, leaning forward slightly, trying to convey his sincerity. "Tell us what it means to you. What do you want?" The man stared at Jake, his expression shifting from anger to contemplation. We want respect. We want to be part of this community, not pushed aside. His voice softened, but the fire still danced in his eyes, ready to flare if not met with the right response. Around them, the crowd fidgeted. Some were nodding, others still stewing in anger. Jake felt the heaviness of their emotions weighing down on him. What if we did something about that? What if we opened a dialogue? He proposed. Not just tonight, but as a community. We can't fix what's broken unless we talk. A murmur rippled through the gathering. Chief Morgan stepped beside Jake, adding, "If we have to start with tough conversations to mend these relationships, then we'll do just that. But it has to come from all of us." The man looked back toward his friends, and in that moment, uncertainty fell upon them all like a soft sheet. Jake felt a shimmering thread of hope weaving through the air. "We can't keep going like this," he urged. "Let us break this cycle. Together." For a heartbeat, silence wrapped around them, but slowly, the men from the docks began to nod. Straws of acceptance emerged from their anger. Whether it was fear, curiosity, or a longing for healing that drove their actions, Jake couldn't know. Then from the murmurs of the crowd, a voice broke through. An older local, someone he had seen before, stepped forward. "We've all been wronged, one way or another," she said, her tone shaking yet determined. "Maybe it's time we listened to each other's stories." Jake recognized the power in her words. It was a moment where divisions faded, if only for a heartbeat. They were all wearing their burdens, and now, the urge to put them down flickered like a dim light, but suddenly, the noise of dissent erupted anew from the fringes of the group. A few stragglers, still locked in anger, began to shout, rallying against the idea of cooperation. Jake's heart sank. "Hold on!" he shouted, desperation creeping in. "We're onto something here. If we let this escalate again, it will only pull us further apart. Can't we at least try?" As the crowd vibrated with clashing opinions, Jake realized the real battle lay ahead, not with fists, but with open minds and hearts. Could he really help them shift from anger to understanding? Caught in this brewing storm, he wondered if tonight would mark the beginning of healing or the threshold of further division. But one thing was clear, the moment of truth was looming, and everyone stood at a crossroads, waiting for a leader to step forward. What choice would they make? Could Jake navigate this tense standoff, or would the night spiral out of control once more? The commotion surged like a tidal wave, drowning out all sense of reason. Voices rose, emotions flared, anger and hurt danced on the wind. Jake's heart raced as he scanned the crowd. Faces filled with uncertainty, fear, and pain reflected back at him. "People, please!" Jake shouted again, raising his hands, hoping to silence the growing storm. He felt Chief Morgan by his side, his presence sturdy but equally tense. The chief's jaw was set tight. The bruised man, who had seemed so vulnerable just moments ago, was now becoming agitated again. "You think you can just come in here and fix everything with words? You don't know us." He stepped forward, challenging Jake with a gaze that could unnerve anyone. "I want to know you. I want to hear your story," Jake replied earnestly, his voice cutting through the chaos like a beacon. "We may not share the same experiences, but we're all here. Together. Right now." Suddenly, a loud voice erupted from the back, a younger man throwing accusations. "You're just trying to save face. Your words mean nothing." Jake swallowed hard. It was true, words alone wouldn't heal the wounds. They needed action, respect, and genuine understanding. "I'm not just here to talk," he said, an edge creeping into his tone. "If you give me a chance, we can work together to change things." Some in the crowd were apprehensive, but others were nodding, hope flickering in their eyes. It was a delicate balance, and Jake knew that one wrong move could tip it all back into chaos. Then the older woman spoke again, her quavering voice cutting through the noise. "We've all felt pushed aside. Each one of us carries a story. We need to share them. Not just tonight, but from here on out. The strength in her words ignited something in Jake. Exactly. He exclaimed. That's what we're here for. Let us start sharing. Open the floor. We can learn from each other, find common ground. With that, an uneasy quiet fell over the crowd. Eyes shifted, glances were exchanged. Jake felt the energy change, like the calm after a storm. The bruised man stared at Jake, uncertainty intermingling with something else, maybe curiosity. One of the dock workers stepped into the opening. I'll go first, he said hesitantly, glancing at his peers. I've worked those docks since I was a kid. I watched my father work them too. Everything's changed, and we feel like strangers in our own town. The crowd listened, slowly, carefully. Jake felt a shift in the atmosphere, a collective exhale as tension began to ease. A woman chimed in, my family, we struggled too. When the factories closed, we lost everything. No jobs, no future. It's hard not to fear the unknown. Each story brought another layer to the table, peeling back the anger and exposing raw, shared humanity. Jake's heart ached for them, but he felt a glimmer of hope as he saw others from the crowd stepping up, sharing their vulnerable truths. But just as the connection deepened, a loud voice piped up from the back. What's the point? You think telling stories will change anything? Sorrow doesn't pay the bills. Frustration rippled through Jake as he realized that for every story shared, doubt still lurked, ready to pull them back into the dark. Would they let this moment slip away? As Jake's gaze swept the crowd, he felt the weight of the past bearing down on all of them. He knew that while they were beginning to speak openly, they hadn't yet taken the hardest step, the willingness to bridge the gap. Please, let us not turn our backs now, Jake urged, desperate for this moment to stick. He could see the flickering fire in their hearts. Was it enough? He wondered about the real battle ahead, the fear of vulnerability and the fight for understanding. Could they keep moving forward, or would they retreat into silence once again? The night was far from over. Jake scanned the crowd, feeling the weight of those searching eyes. He knew he had to spark something, a push forward that could shift the energy back to something constructive. Listen, I get it. He said, his voice rising just a little, filled with determination. You fought hard, and I can't begin to pretend to understand your struggles. But standing here and shutting each other down? That won't fix anything. It'll just keep us stuck and angry. The murmuring began again. A few shook their heads, but some leaned in, intrigued. That was the opening he needed. Let me tell you my story. I grew up here. I've watched my town change, too. My friends lost their jobs, my family struggled during the downturn. I've felt that heartbreak of watching people give up on each other. But I believe we can change that. With every word, he saw some faces soften. The younger man who had shouted earlier seemed to be processing Jake's sincerity. Maybe we can create something new together. It starts right here. Right now, Jake encouraged, glancing toward Chief Morgan, whose eyes held a cautious optimism. The bruised man stepped forward again, uncertainty giving way to a flicker of hope. You really think we can do something? We've tried before. It's always the same. Yeah, an older gentleman chimed in from the back, we're tired of quick fixes and empty promises. What's gonna change this time? Honesty, Jake said confidently. We need to be open with each other, not just tonight but every day. We need to fight for each other. I know it won't be easy, but I'm willing to put in the work. Are you with me? A ripple of conversation floated through the crowd. Slowly, a few more stories began to unfold, hesitant at first but then growing louder, each voice a piece of a collective tapestry. I lost my school because the funding vanished, one woman recounted, the weight of her pain evident in her trembling voice. All the kids had to find their way to compete, while we just wanted to learn. Same goes for the parks, added another. They used to be our refuge. They just let them fall apart. What do our kids have now? As more voices popped up, the air thickened with emotion. It was anger, yes, but there was also a shared sense of possibility. Jake believed they were at the cusp of something real, a chance to connect, to be part of a solution instead of just endless complaints. Then suddenly, the sound of footsteps interrupted. The tension returned as people turned toward the entrance. An unfamiliar face stood there, looking lost and confused. The stranger's eyes swept across the crowd, searching. "Is this the town meeting?" he asked, his voice cutting through the buzz. Jake's heart raced again. He felt a prick of apprehension. Someone new, at a time when unease clung to the air. The crowd hesitated, whispering amongst themselves. Would this stranger help bring clarity or just add to the chaos? Jake stepped forward, tension thrumming in his veins. "Yes, it is. We're just getting started. Please, join us." The stranger took a deep breath, vulnerability flickering briefly across his face. The room quieted again, heartbeats synchronized in uncertainty. What could he possibly say next that would either shatter the fragile hope they had started to build or guide them deeper into understanding? Jake pushed those thoughts aside, determined to keep the momentum alive. "If you have a story, we want to hear it." As the stranger took a step forward, time seemed to stretch, the air electric with anticipation. The crowd held its collective breath, unaware of how one man's revelation could change everything. Would he share wisdom or wounds? Would this be the pivotal moment they had all been looking for, or could it all come crashing down once again? The stranger hesitated, eyes flickering from face to face, absorbing the collective tension in the room. Clearing his throat, he stepped further into the space, the dim light catching the edges of his worn jacket. Jake felt the crowd lean in closer, sensing that the man was about to reveal something significant. "My name is Sam," he finally said, voice steady yet strained. "I didn't plan to come here tonight. I was looking for the local bar, trying to drown some old ghosts." He paused, breathing deeply, as if grounding himself. "But something pulled me in. Maybe it was the desperation in your voices. I felt it, too." A murmur rippled through the crowd, and Jake could see Sam's hands tremble slightly. This vulnerability felt raw and real, and Jake could see others starting to connect with it. "I lost my family," Sam continued, his eyes glistening as he spoke. "Not in a tragic accident but through neglect and indifference. I was so caught up in my own despair, I forgot to be present. I thought I was alone, that it was just my burden to carry." Several people nodded slowly, sharing in his pain. Jake leaned in, wanting to absorb every word that was about to come. Sam's voice rose stronger now, fueled by the empathy he evoked. "I finally understood, we can't just wait for someone to help us. We have to be the change we want. We have to fight together, for each other, because if we don't, we lose everything that makes us human." The crowd was electric, the air charged with emotion. Faces reflected empathy and understanding, moving away from skepticism to a collective willingness to engage. A woman in the front stepped forward, wiping her tears. "You're right. We've given up fighting for our community. We just sit back and complain. We need to rebuild, we need to reclaim our places for our kids." "I'm in," a young man called out. "I'm tired of believing we can't change our fate." Sam looked moved, reminded of why he had even stepped into the meeting. "It's the small things that build the big things," he added, his voice softer now. "It starts with you, your families, your neighbors. If you extend your hand, others will follow." The room began to buzz with enthusiasm again. An older gentleman raised his hand. "What can we do? How do we start?" Jake felt electrified by the energy surging. This wasn't just a meeting anymore, this was an awakening. "Let us figure it out together," he said, his heart racing with renewed hope. "Let us commit to this. We can schedule monthly meetings. We can create a community board. We can find resources, develop plans. We have the power to change our story." Cheers erupted, hands clapping, voices growing bolder. He watched as the crowd began organizing themselves, assigning tasks and voting on ideas. It felt like a dam breaking, as if hope had flowed in where before there had been fear. Then, amid the rising tide of voices, a sudden silence crashed down. Jake turned to see Chief Morgan, who had stepped forward, a noticeable conflict in his expression. "Wait," he said, cutting through the excitement. "If you really want change, you need to hear this too." Confusion spread. This wasn't just a moment of celebration, something heavier loomed. Jake's pulse quickened. What did the chief mean? Was there a twist yet to come that could reshape everything? Only silence followed, thick and heavy, as they all waited for a revelation that could shatter the newfound unity they had just begun to build. The tension in the air was palpable, cutting through the vibrant energy that had sparked moments ago. Jake felt a shiver run down his spine as he locked eyes with Chief Morgan. "What do you mean?" he asked quietly, the hopeful glimmers of resolve in the crowd now flickering like dimming lights. Chief Morgan took a deep breath, her shoulders squared with authority. "If you want real change, you need to understand what's at stake. This isn't just about coming together tonight. We're standing at a crossroads, but there are real fractures, and many people's lives hang in the balance." Gasps rippled through the crowd, confusion written across many faces. "What does that mean for us?" someone called out, seeking clarity in their complex landscape of emotions. "Last week, we discovered evidence that some locals are planning to escalate tensions further. A few factions are already at odds, and there's talk of retaliation," Chief Morgan said, her voice steady but urgent. "If we don't act now to bring everyone together, the cycle of violence will only spiral deeper and this fragile unity we've forged could shatter into chaos." The realization of what was happening settled like an icy weight in the pit of Jake's stomach. There was no time to lose. "We need to tackle this head-on," he shouted, steeling himself. "Right now, this moment cannot be wasted. Trust is on the line. We can't let fear dictate our future. If these conversations can help bridge the divide, we need to start now." Sam echoed, his voice filling with determination. "No more waiting. We all have a part to play." With that surge of urgency flowing through the crowd, Jake took a step back to plot their course. "Let's break into small groups. We'll share our fears, the realities we face out in the streets, and explore solutions. Every voice matters. Each concern can be a step forward." The crowd stirred, taking up positions. People gathered around broken circles, creating sparks of discussions. Hearts began to share stories that held the weight of what they felt: the anger, the fear, the desires for something better. Jake could see the raw honesty igniting between them, forging unbreakable bonds. Minutes turned to hours, and the mood had shifted soundly from fear to urgency. From the edges of his circle, he could hear discussions turning into agreements. They began to set commitments. Someone raised a hand. "Let's organize a community cleanup. Restore pride in our town." Another voice chimed in, "Let's create a resource board to connect the lost jobs." As realization settled in, excitement bubbled over. Little by little, people were bonding over their visions, including the dock workers, the families, and even the skeptics. Hope blossomed where anger once prevailed, but one thought weighed heavily on Jake: was it enough? Would they truly be able to counter the factions threatening to tear their unity apart? Suddenly, Laura stepped into the dim light, a smile breaking through the stakes of the evening. "Jake!" she called out, moving toward him, pride and relief washing over her face. "I just spoke to some parents down the street. They want to join forces to create a committee for the youth. They're so eager." He felt warmth fill his heart. For every ounce of darkness threatening to consume them, there was a countering light, a sign that they could pull through together. "I want to be part of this." Chief Morgan stepped up beside him, her presence a reaffirmation of their united front. "Let's establish clear lines of communication to ensure every voice gets heard. Community meetings, an open-door policy. Everyone needs to feel safe to express their concerns. Cheers erupted, and Jake felt his heart swell. Yes. Let us do it. Let us make promises together, commitments tonight. We will not let fear dictate our paths. They connected, eyes glistening with determination. Each bond forged amid the chaos lit a fire in the town's heart. The fear that once filled the air began to fade as purpose took its place. As hours passed, laughter broke the stillness of the night, and they all began to see each other not as adversaries but as neighbors, family. Their stories intertwined, weaving a fabric that was richer and more vibrant than any one person could tell. Through tears of joy and hope, they recognized the transformation taking place. The moon rose high above, illuminating faces filled with newfound purpose. It was time to step forward. They were ready to tackle their challenges, united. Jake looked out at the crowd and felt gratitude wash over him. They were no longer merely a fractured community, they had become a family ready to embrace a brighter future together. With hearts full of resolve, Jake shouted into the night, "This is just the beginning. Each of us will matter and will fight for each other. We will change our town." A roar of affirmation echoed back, one that shook the ground under their feet and silenced the doubt hanging in the air. One by one, they grabbed hands, a long line of solidarity stretching through the crowd, and as they held on, they knew, this was Maplewood. This was home. Forever transformed, now more than ever, Jake felt a weight lifting. The journey was about to unfold, and he dared to hope brighter days lay ahead. If you are inspired by this transformation, you need to subscribe now. Don't miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Comment your reactions and feelings about this ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. This is the moment to bring change. Don't wait not even one more second to share.